Hi everyone, Nicole Littman with Aurelian Coaching. Thanks for joining this week. This week we are talking about the aftermath of employee termination. Okay, how to care for the remaining team members after one of their colleagues was fired. I'm not talking about how to prepare to fire somebody. I'm not talking about the unpleasant conversation of having to fire somebody. No. What I'm suggesting is after such an event occurs, that your job is not done, okay? And I don't see enough talked about this concept of what do you do with the remaining employees afterwards? Is there anything to be done? How do you care for them? Why would you need to do anything with them? Listen, it's so important. It's so important. And I understand the motivation to avoid any follow-up conversations with anybody else. Number one, it may feel like, well, it was an employee termination. There's nothing to be said. Everything is confidential. There's nothing that I need to tell all the other employees. What could I possibly have to say, right? I'm not suggesting at all that you would ever reveal anything about that employee's termination. And in fact, what I want to make clear from the very beginning is this is not about the employee termination at all. This is about the remaining team members. And so all of the content, anything that I'm going to be talking about today is about the remaining employees. Okay, so understand that perspective. The termination may have been the triggering event, but I'm not suggesting that you have anything to say about the actual termination. I am focused entirely on the remaining employees. So that's number one. Number two is that after such an emotionally draining experience, if you've ever had to let somebody go, it is heart-wrenching. It's very, very unpleasant. And to have to go through that experience, I understand the motivation to just jump right back into your work, right? It's something that's comfortable and familiar and you know how to do well. And there's this concept of if you do this work well, you get some positive feedback and positive reinforcement. So I totally understand that motivation. All I'm saying is that there is a little bit more to do with the other employees, that you shouldn't jump into work at the expense of caring for the remaining team members. Okay. Third, what I want to talk about is what happens if you don't have this conversation, right? So there are two things that can happen, and these are two things that you absolutely do not want to happen after an employee is terminated. Number one is morale goes down, right? If you don't care for the employees after a colleague was let go, morale is already going to take a dip. You don't want it completely tanking, right? So there's something that you should do, something that you can do to prevent that from happening. And number two, you don't want productivity to go down, right? If people are really concerned about this and they're spending time not doing work because they're either talking about it or they're thinking about it and how it may impact them. When you're one person down, what you do not want to happen is productivity to go down, right? So these are the types of things that you can avoid, and actually in really, really straightforward, easy ways. What I want to do is separate the issue of whether something is complicated versus simple from the issue of whether something is hard or easy to do, right? So you can have something really, really complicated and a heavy, sensitive, emotionally draining situation that has a pretty simple, straightforward answer in terms of behavior and correction. In the same vein, you can have a really simple situation, but it can be so hard for a variety of reasons to act on it, right? Okay, so let's separate those two. And what I'm suggesting is that even if these are emotionally charged situations or you feel uncertain or uncomfortable about it, listen, there are some very easy things that you can do to get the desired result, which is to basically play defense. Make sure that morale doesn't tank, make sure that productivity doesn't tank. It's actually really straightforward to do. So how do you do it? There's reactive and proactive, right? So the reactive piece to this is there's going to be some Q&A. Okay, so people are going to have questions and you're going to have to respond to those questions. Here's the nuance. Those questions might not be vocalized. People might not, say them. They may be scared, uncertain, but believe me, they will have the questions. They just might not ask you, okay? And what I want to recommend is that you go ahead and answer the questions even if they don't articulate them, okay? This is what good managers do. Listen, I know that after coming out of an unpleasant experience like firing somebody, you don't want to invite more difficult conversations. But again, if you want to protect productivity and morale, there's a really straightforward way to go ahead and put some information out there that will go a long, long way toward getting people in the right mind and back to work, okay? So one of those questions is, was this isolated or is it part of a larger restructuring plan? This is really straightforward, right? It's yes or no, okay? And if it's yes, if it's part of a larger restructuring plan, then presumably you have some guidance from upper management and leadership. There's an associated communication plan. Go ahead and follow that. Super easy, right? If there might be a larger restructuring plan at play and you just don't know either way, say that. Say, as far as I know, there's no larger restructuring plan. I have not been informed, right? So as far as I know, this was an isolated incident. It's okay to say that. You can say that, from your personal knowledge and experience, totally fine to say that. You don't have to speak for the organization or speak for the company. To just be able to tell your employees, look, this is what I know. Super straightforward, right? Okay. The second burning question that your team members are likely to have is whether they're at risk, right? So a lot of times employees think, because there's so much mystery shrouded around somebody being let go, as there should be, right? You should never reveal anything about that. There is always the question of, am I doing something that person did that is putting me at risk? So this is also something super straightforward to address that question. And what I recommend is that within 2 business days, that you sit down with all of your team members, just one-on-one, and just have a statement about, hey, you're doing great. You're doing really great. Everything's fantastic. Let's keep plugging along. So easy, right? And if there are things that person is working on, that's fine to reinforce as well, right? You can say, hey, look, you have all the information that you need. Let's go back and look at the last performance review. Those 2 or 3 things that we define that you should be working on are still on the table, and we are making the progress according to the plan. So everything is just as it should be. Okay, so just to be able to confirm for the employee that there's nothing that they don't know that affects them, it just takes such a weight off their shoulders, and it's a really simple thing to do, to be able to say, yeah, you're doing okay, or you already have all the information and nothing's changed. Let's continue to work on that stuff. Easy. Okay. The last thing is to reinforce the process, if there is a process, formal or informal, around how somebody is, before somebody is let go, right? So if you have performance improvement plans, those performance reviews, the regular weekly feedback, whatever you have in place, reinforce those procedures and processes to the employees so that they are informed on how they would be given a heads up if anything's a problem, right? So basically you're telling them, hey, remember that this is the process and you're going to be given a heads up, okay, if anything is a problem. So those three things really go a long, long way. That's the reactive piece of this. Your remaining team members are going to have questions, and whether or not they actually articulate those questions, you should just go ahead and answer them in those ways. Super straightforward. Okay. Now, the next set of activities is more proactive, right? So you're one person down. There is always the question of what do we do with the work that person was doing? Do we divide it up? Are we just gonna, is that position no longer gonna be filled? Is the work and the activities just gonna be absorbed by the existing team? What is the plan going forward for that person's work is such an obvious question. But here's the thing that I want to make sure managers do, is it's not enough to just say, let's divvy up the work, because everybody is going to jump to that, right? And if you have a great team, you're going to have people that are volunteering, they're going to go ahead and spread out the work. Here's a couple of things that I want you to keep in mind. Number one, to the degree possible, have the existing team members manage how that work is going to be divvied up. So because you might not be as in the weeds with your team members as they are with each other, they might just do that more efficiently. So let them use their strengths and their problem solving and their awareness about the work, and let them handle that, okay? Let them tell you, this is how we recommend that work should be handled. Fantastic, right? And it saves you the work of having to figure that out. Okay, but secondly is there is this burning question about, well, how long is this going to last, right? So often it's just unstated that the remaining team members just have to pick up the slack for as long as they have to. That feels very unsatisfactory. That kind of sucks, right? When you're already so busy, somebody leaves, you have to take on more work, and there's no end in sight. Oh no, that's terrible, right? So I'm not suggesting that you give people any sort of guarantee or a drop dead date for anything, right? But to tell them what the plan is, whether you're going to replace somebody, how that work is going to be absorbed, what the timelines are, just let them in on that. It does a lot for helping the employees kind of figure out how long they're going to be doing this, and to just give them some peace of mind. The second thing is, or maybe it's the third thing, I don't know, I'm losing track. The other thing is to let them know if they have any role in deciding on a replacement, if there is going to be one, right? So will you want people to help you screen resumes or do a phone interview, or will you have them be involved at all in maybe a meet and greet with the finalists, the final candidates? And just let them know, or not, right? You let them know, is this optional? Are they interested or not interested? Or is it mandatory that they participate? And this is how, and this is the time commitment and how much it might impact their workload. All of these decisions, just don't let it go unstated, right? Work with the employee to have a plan to communicate. Don't just let it go unstated, because it's such a burden. It's such a burden. And I understand it's a burden on you too, right? You're the manager and you have to figure all this stuff out, and you have to hire somebody. You just fired somebody and now you have to hire somebody. I get it, right? But bring your people in closer, right? Create more of a partnership, team environment if you can. Okay, so those are my tips for the proactive Q&A and the reactive Q&A, and then the proactive things that you should be doing. The only other thing that I would add is to increase your employee recognition and your acknowledgement and your observations after somebody is fired. Your team, your remaining team members are going to be doing a lot more work. They're already doing a lot of work, right? And now they have to do more. Go the extra mile in terms of employee recognition. Just notice, observe, make note of what they're doing well. Say thank you a lot. A lot. Just saying thankful. I'm so grateful for your expertise. I'm so grateful for your commitment in the aftermath of this. It's a really hard time, and everybody is just say thanks. It makes a big difference. It really does. And if it's possible, and you have some discretionary funds and stuff like that, you take your employees out to lunch. Do something, maybe another happy hour, do some gift card, I don't know. But whatever fits within your culture for employee recognition in the aftermath of somebody being fired, increase that, okay? And I know you're already so tapped out, right? Kind of emotionally, and at work you've got a million things to do. You've got the meetings. I get it. Just take some extra time out to take care of your employees, of your team members, because if you don't, you're just going to be worse off. You're going to be worse off. The productivity, the risk to productivity and morale is not worth it. Go ahead and put in the extra time, extra recognition, the extra communication, and it'll be much, much better. And again, it may feel complicated and really weighty and sensitive and all that kind of stuff, but actually, in terms of behavior and things you need to do, super, super simple, straightforward, easy to do. So you might as well do it. Okay. Next week, we are going to be talking about another management challenge, and this is going to be true whether or not you actually have personnel management duties or not. And this is something that I've heard from my advisory board, so this is why I want to address it, which is how to manage all of the competing priorities and initiatives and all your just day-to-day tasks with limited resources. So say, this isn't even like if somebody was fired, but wow, you really wish you could hire somebody. It would really be great to have another body and, have the work of 3 people that's currently being done by 2 people actually be done by 3 people. but you can't. You can't. It's not in the budget for whatever reason. You don't have the resources that you'd ideally like to execute on all those competing priorities and those initiatives. How do you manage that? That will be next week. So until then, have a great rest of the week and weekend, and I will see you guys here same time, same place. Bye now.